This is runZero Hour, episode Hex 17, which Todd, did you
I
look
did
it up?
not.
Because I
I
did.
did not look it up. No.
17, Hex 17 is end of transmission block. So we're
Okay.
done, I guess.
Congrats.
But
Well, great show, everybody.
yeah. So hi, I am Rob King. I am joined by Tod Beardsley, our illustrious Vice President of Security Research. Hi, Todd.
Hello.
And today we have a very special guest that we're super excited to have. This is really neat. Um, the illustrious Nemo, creator of End of Life date, which is the opposite of my social life, which was end of date life. But
Zing.
zing. So everybody, the questions are open. The chat is open. Please feel free to let us know anything you might have. And yeah, let's take it away.
Cool. Wonderful. Well, let's all meet Nemo. Hello, Nemo. Welcome to our dopey little web show. Um, I learned about the existence of you
You
when
found me.
yeah, I found you when I was researching end-of-life operating systems and all that jazz. And as you might expect, your name rockets to the top of list of people I should talk to because you are the creator of end-of-life.date. Why are you the creator of end-of-life.date?
So thank you for the lovely welcome. Nice to be here. I created End of Life.date sometime in 2019 because I was a security engineer and I was dealing with the EOL of various different products, primarily programming languages, Ruby, Python, PHP, Kubernetes, those kind of things.
Mhm.
And my engineers would come and ask me, hey, I would tell them, hey, we should shift off this stuff. And they would come back and say, hey, where are you giving me this information from? I can't seem to find it. There
Hmm.
wasn't an easy way to access this information. So I ended up creating, hey, you should just go to endoflife.date/PHP, and that will tell you what all you need to know. And that seemed to work within the company. And I made it a wiki so anyone could contribute. And that's the primary way the site's been growing since.
Yeah, and so if this is news to you, dear audience, that end of life.date is a thing on the internet, um, go right now. Stop watching this
Yes,
webcast
yes.
and go right
Okay.
now and go check because it's really cool. You've got how many contributors would you say you have? I counted, dozens to hundreds in that zone.
Yeah,
Is
we
that
have, I
accurate?
think, roughly 10-ish active contributors who are working across maintaining a lot of different pages. And then we get a lot of drive-by contributions. So if you add those up, we get to hundreds of people who are showing up and just they really care about Cisco switches or they really care about Netgear devices. So they'll only come and fix those things. But we have a bunch of similar contributors.
So do you think like your typical drive-by? Do you have like a persona in mind of like what this person is? I imagine it's someone who just had to audit all this stuff and got really
Hmm.
annoyed that they had to audit all this stuff and wrote it down on end of life.date so notionally other people wouldn't have to do that. Also, they wouldn't have to do it anymore.
Yes, we have people who have told me because they were moving across companies and they already had this information up in a spreadsheet somewhere and they wanted to make it accessible to themselves after they moved. I've had people who would tell me because we have an API and they were already using our APIs for specific products and they're like, hey, we'd like to use this for these two other products which we
Mhm.
already track and maintain internally, and it'd be nice if we could just harmonize and use the API all through. And I feel there's a lot of like sysadmins who show up because they're already using the site. They see, we are tracking some products that they're using, some products we are not. Uh, a lot of requests we get are from programmers, developers, and also like common public as well. I feel
Mhm.
that is also an unseen audience in the way because a lot of
Sure.
the traffic that we get is primarily on things like iPhones, Mac OS,
Sure.
Pixel devices, and so on. And people really care about these things. Like the e-waste topic has been going up. Uh, and yeah, so we get all kinds of drive-by contributions from different people.
So I have a fundamental, possibly philosophical question. Why do you care so much about this in specific? Like there's a nerd for everybody and for everything, and everything has a nerd with it, right? And like this seems to be, I don't want to oversimplify your whole, human experience, um, but this seems to be your thing. And why do you care so much about this?
I'm an information guerrilla activist of sorts. I really like it when important information is accessible to people. I'm a Wikipedia contributor. I'm an OpenStreetMap contributor. And I think this also aligns with the kind of other work that I do, where this is really important information that is often hidden away and inaccessible. And this was pinching me really hard when I was dealing with it at my earlier roles. And that is when I realized, this needs to be much more accessible. And I wrote up a rant on Twitter. The rant essentially went, this information needs to be better presented. Companies should learn from PHP. PHP does a really good job if you haven't seen it. The good important things they get
How
right.
often do those words go together? PHP's done a really. I'm sorry. I love PHP.
So. I have other rants about PHP actually being a great programming language, but I will skip those for now. But PHP gets the supported versions page really right. They have, for example, color-coded versions. They have a date line, which tells you what exactly supported today versus not. They give you exact clear definitions of what security support means versus what active support means, etc. They tell you the latest releases of each and all of the branches. They also tell you the exact dates on which they were coming, and so on. It's a really good page. And then you'd compare that to something like, let's say, Kubernetes, which had, I don't know, I think 4 paragraphs of text, and that's it at the time. And we also, so this became my nerd entry point into this thing. I really want to, there's this bunch of information which seems to be inaccessible. So I started compiling it. Turns out a bunch more other people care, and they also started contributing. And it has blown up ever since.
That's great. And I understand that currently you're traveling in some connection to the International Institute of Obsolescence, which sounds like mad science to me, but also sounds rad, like the kind of thing that I would like to be more involved in. Can you tell me a little bit about what that's about? There's like a bunch of, it's a whole chapter system, right? Like kind of how old EFF was.
I am not a member, but I found out about the institute a while ago because absolutely these things, there are people with titles called obsolescence engineers, which I wasn't aware of. But there are people who care about the obsolescence of their entire supply chain. For example, if you're working at a large hardware company like Boeing or Airbus or whatever, you care about how long each and every one of the hardware products that you're buying is supported and how you're shipping them, and you want to maintain the timelines accordingly. And it's a whole job at large companies like this. And the institute, I believe, provides like a nice conference and like chapters to actually discuss out the problems that the industry is facing. And they've had, primarily from my perspective, I care primarily about software, but also hardware, especially from the e-waste perspective. But they care a lot more about the hardware side of things. But they've had talks about, for example, things like SBOM and software bill of materials in the past, and they care about software obsolescence as well. And they happen to have a track on knowledge management this year, which I felt was perfect for talking about end of life update. So I'm gonna go up there in a few next week in Paris.
Oh no!
To fight obsolescence management.
Okay, cool. Yeah, you're gonna go up there next week in Paris and talk about all of this stuff. So, so that's rad. I had one other question.
Really
difference.
But go on.
Okay. The difference between so when you talk about hardware obsolescence versus software obsolescence, do you mean hardware in the sense of like physical, like things just wear out, like, because of heat and friction and all that jazz? Or is it more like firmware than hardware? Like, because that's always a funny place, right? Like, because there's code involved, and you can always update firmware if you put your back into it, for good or ill. But I'm curious if like, and maybe this is not for you, right? Maybe this is like an Institute of Obsolescence question, but you're involved with them now, so I'm gonna ask you. What is what is there a different way of thinking about obsolescence when you're talking about hardware versus software versus firmware? Maybe.
I think instead of obsolescence, I prefer thinking about support primarily, which is a very fuzzy word I've learned over time while working on NF5.8. What support means, and this applies equally well to software and hardware. What support means for a specific piece of thing that you have, probably gotten for free if it's a free software product, for example, or a piece of hardware you might have gotten for free as well. But what support means might have different connotations. The company might say, hey, what support means is we will replace your camera if it breaks on this device for a specific time period, right? They may, Apple, for
So that's
example.
like the warranty model, right?
Yeah. Or Apple also has this thing, for example, they can discontinue a model, which means we will continue to support it, but we will not ship you a new one, which might be relevant to you, if you want to buy a like-for-like device down the line. So you might care about things like this. And then the primary use case that people understanding of the term support is typically security support. Will I keep getting software updates or not? But yeah, there's a spectrum of things that are meant by support. And I think obsolescence tries to care a lot about how long do we need to support it? Can we keep using it in some shape or form for the fitment it was meant to be used as?
Interesting.
We had a quick question from the chat. You had mentioned there's an API. Can you just...
Yes, I will put a link. So we have two different APIs. When I started the project, I made a tiny simple API which gives you a list of all the releases of a specific product. So for example, if you go to endoflife.date/API/Kubernetes, it'll give you all the releases /Kubernetes.json. It'll give you all the releases of Kubernetes alongside their EOL dates and so on. But it wasn't enough information. We realized over time, people care about things like release dates and release numbers and links to their change logs and so on. Since then, we have made a new V1 API, primarily led by one of our contributors, Mark, and it's been live currently. So I'll put links to those in the chat.
Cool.
It does only track the 400 or so products that we do track. But
only.
Yeah.
And hey, if your product's not on there, it's a wiki. You can add it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I really dig end-of-life.date. I know we use it here at runZero to make the call, right? Because we do a lot of asset scanning and we learn all kinds of things about assets. And when we are, confident in the fingerprint, right, which is usually when we have a fingerprint, we will tack on end of life info. But I would say 9 times out of 10, it comes from end-of-life.date. There's some some research that goes in when something isn't yet on end-of-life.date. But this is my directive to Rob. Rob, make sure you update end-of-life.date when we come up with new fingerprints for things that aren't in there.
Is that a binding operational directive, Todd?
It is a binding toderational directive.
Toderational directive.
Yes, a BTD.
BTD. Excellent.
So yeah. And if you're in the sound of my voice, please do contribute to endoflife.date. It is I'm kind of surprised that there isn't and I look at things with my Fed colored glasses sometimes. But I'm surprised that there isn't already something like this from NIST, right? Or or something like that. Like DoD, U.S. Department of Defense maintains this just ginormous list of STIGs. I don't remember what that stands for. Rob, you might know. But STIGs are basically it's not a vulnerability, but here's how you configure your way out of this problem with this specific Cisco thing, right? And they've got thousands of these. I'm surprised they don't already publish something like this. Thank you. Yes, the Security Technical Implementation Guide. Thank you, Josh. So on the one hand, I think it's wonderful that you, Nemo, are the captain of this particular end-of-life ship. On the other, boy, this sure smells like a critical resource at some point. And I'm surprised there's not backing on this. What's your funding like? You just pay for it? Is it dollars a month? Are you looking to pitch? Hey, Sharks.
I've had lots of companies apply for, can we put up a loan to go on the website? Because it's a fairly high traffic website. So if I ever want to make money via ads or sponsorship, I can. But thankfully, the expenses for the website are fairly low.
Yeah.
It is a simple static website. It runs under the wiki on GitHub, all free resources. The only thing I really need to pay for is domains, which is fairly low. The thing that I'm currently planning to deploy some. So we do have some donations that show up every month, a few $100s or so. And I would like to deploy them to get more contributors on board, run a bug bounty-like model to close off some of our long pending requests.
An EOL bounty, perhaps.
Yes.
That sounds rad.
This is the whole all modern infrastructure Nemo kind of
Right. Yes.
situation.
It's
Like
that
you got the whole thing.
XKCD.
Yes, yes. So thank you.
Cool. Well, I don't know if you know this, Rob and Nemo. I wrote a paper. I sent it to both of you, and you both read it. I wrote a paper, and it's all about end of life, specifically end of life operating systems, not PHP, not Nix or anything like that. Operating systems. And I wrote this paper. And by the way, this slide deck, I'm going to go really fast to this. I can expand or contract this slide deck as much as I want, mainly because there are
Anything
no
gets you,
bullets.
Todd.
There are no bullets in my slides. They are all screenshots from zombie movies. And so this is the first second of Night of the Living Dead, the foundational American horror classic, which I think is I love this of it. This is a sign of George Romero's genius. It is an open country road and so much possibility. And that's how I felt when I was writing this paper. But here's one thing that's not a screenshot from a zombie movie or a very boring zombie movie. This is the bottom line up front. You can tune out for the next 15 minutes if this is the only thing you care about. Today, right now, well, I'm going to put an asterisk on that. As of September 30th, the average number of machines with operating systems that run in a typical network, which is a weird way to describe all networks, right? But a typical network tends to come in right at about 5% end of life. This is average over the time of the observations, which was like 10 weeks. And that 5% is that lower number. That is the beyond support cutoff point. So there are things that are end of life, and as Nemo well knows, and actually helped me out on articulating some of this. There's basically two buckets of end of lifeness. One is like end of features and end of like little UI bug fixes and all that. That's like level one, tier one end of life. Tier two end of life is like no more security fixes. Don't run this in a production network. 5%, which which I didn't know what to expect, right? Because this is the paper I was looking to read. I wanted to find out because I had just started here at runZero, and I'm like, oh, we track end of life. Cool. What's normal? Nobody knows. Okay, let's find out. And so this was very interesting to me. And that was like basically the reason why I wrote this paper. I have way more to say. And so mainly why I wrote this paper. This was because, like I said, I kind of care. I don't care about this to the level that Nemo cares about this, but I do care about end of life. And I have wrestled with this for a while in my, InfoSec career. And so I basically wanted to read this paper. So I had to write this paper in order to read it. I'm very interested in like, what's normal? Is normal okay? And how am I doing against normal? Like if I'm an IT guy, if I'm a CISO, if I'm an auditor, if I'm an insurance agency, right? Like what's normal? And those are kinds of things that I couldn't find anything on like archive. I couldn't find any like real papers on it. I found a bunch of marketing fluff about, oh, end of life is bad and you should not have it. I'm like, okay, well, that's not terribly helpful. And so that's why I went down this road. I'm just giving the slide before the slide every time. That's why I care about EOL. You can tell I've practiced this quite a bit. I've given this presentation exactly one time already, but this is how I feel that everyone thinks about EOL. There are zombies on the road right now, and you don't care because they're not making problems for you. Like that seems to be the way we operate today.
I want to go down to the pub, have a pint, and wait for it to all blow over, Todd.
That's the next movie. No, that's this movie. No, that's both movies. That's all three movies. That's all three movies. Edgar Wright is a genius. The Cornetto trilogy is a genius piece of work. And so yeah, so like I want to raise a little bit of awareness of this, of just like what can we do about it? Why do we even care about end of life, right? Like from security people will tell you all the time, oh, like it'll be a finding in some pen test report. It's like, oh, by the way, you have all these end of life things that I could easily own. And it's like, well, can you? because like you still need a vulnerability that's not fixed. You still need an exploit. You still need to find them. Um, Lucky for you, dear pen tester and criminal, end of life operating systems tend to get easier to detect over time, right? You have one good fingerprint for them, say, and I've got my initial access. I'm now looking for places to set up camp, right, in your network. So what do? I scan with normal, scanning stuff, and then if I have a good fingerprint for an end of life operating system, that fingerprint will last presumably forever because it's end of life and they will never have patches and it will never change, right? It becomes static. And so I think that, and it tells the attacker, A, this is something that's easy to spot. B, if I have an exploit on it that does work, it will work forever. There's
Mhm.
configuration you can use, right? But also, C, if it's end of life and still running and still in like a production environment, this communicates to me that no one's minding the store. It tells me like, oh, this thing is running here and no one seems to care that it's end of life. And so it's probably not instrumented. No one's looking at the logs. I can kind of make myself at home here. I can squat on this thing possibly forever, right? And so this makes it attractive to attackers, which is to me the big reason to care about end of life. Now, could you set up like a whole end of life honeypot in your network? Cool, yeah, do it. Go for it. Let me know how that goes. And maybe you instrument the hell out of it, right? And you have like sneaky blocks on everything. I don't know. I think it would be a fun trick to do. I wouldn't like want to pin my whole cybersecurity posture on such a thing, but I think it would be a fun bit of deception to do in your network is litter it with like an EOL canary, say, something
Mhm.
like that would be kind of neat. So, counting this is harder than you'd expect. Like with anything, right? Like as soon as you try to count things, my whole career, Rob, is counting stuff on networks.
Mhm.
This is what it comes down to.
Yeah. You've gotten exceptionally good at it.
Thank you. This is a screenshot, by the way, of Reanimator. Technically not a zombie movie, but about reanimating the dead. So kind of a Walking Dead adjacent movie. I did just get to see this movie in the historic downtown Austin Paramount Theater not 2 weeks ago, alongside Jeffrey Combs, who is pictured here, and Barbara Crampton, who is a scream queen of Stuart Gordon movies. So that was an amazing magical event that I had no idea was coming when I was writing this paper. And so, but yeah, so at runZero, we have a lot of customers, and hey, is it cool if we like do statistical analysis of your network in order to improve our products or like help security? And most people say yes. And so but there are plenty of customers that don't say yes, right? And those ones go onto, my own block list of like, okay, well, I won't look at those networks. I can't look at networks that are air gapped. I can't look at networks that are on-prem. And then I wanted to make sure that like I had at least enough of a sample across industries so I can make industry comparisons, right? So I throw out a bunch of people or throw out a bunch of companies that don't have enough of that, right? Like we might have like two or three in like arts and entertainment. Like, okay, well, that's not enough to say anything about the arts and entertainment industry. So I'm going to throw that out. What remains are millions of assets still, and hundreds of customers. So cool. I still have a good set. Um, the other thing I did for this study were a couple things that were, I think, a little bit unusual, but I go into it in the paper. One, I picked an end of life date to be static. I picked September 30th, 2025 to be my end of life date. Because of that, none of my graphs have like weird bumps and troughs and stuff as time goes on, right? And that's a way you could do it, right? You could say like, which would be a fun way to do it. Say like, okay, well, end of life dates pass, and then what does that look like? Like, what's the histogram look like? How fast do people act on that? Stuff like that. That would be an interesting thing to do. But I don't do it for this because I'm just looking for this like, what's a normal number? And then two, every site that's in the study must start in the study at the beginning of the observation period, be present in every observation then, and then be present all the way through. So no latecomers like screwing up my data, nobody dropping out in the middle and dumping like all my stats, nothing like that. So a lot of normalization goes on. Anyway, I'm very proud of it, which is why I have a whole slide on it. And so this will then get us to our findings by industry. This is a screenshot of Return of the Living Dead, a spiritual sequel to Night of the Living Dead, and somewhat with a litigious history between the two directors. And so what we found was, like I said, the extended EOL percentage is 5% in normalized across everybody. The EOL percentage is about 8.58%. It's really irritating, by the way, when you have millions of assets and you come up with a percentage of 5.00%, because that's made up. And it's not, I promise. It was very annoying, though. I would have much preferred 0.02%.
I think it was like Everest or something was exactly 29,000 feet tall. And so they added 2 feet to it just so that it wouldn't look fake, something like that.
When Sir Edmund Hillary made the measurement, and the Royal Society in London was like, that sounds fake. Let's add 3 feet. So, but yeah, and so we can see on this table here that things like at the bottom, right, the worst off as of September 30th, was wood, paper, and chemicals manufacturing. And you would think, wow, who cares? That's lumberjacks and Dunder Mifflin. Don't care at all. And I would say, no, you should care, because chemicals manufacturing includes pharmaceuticals and biochem. And so companies like Pfizer, right, is in that category. So kind of important for, public health that, our pharmaceutical friends keep running and doing tests and making cool vaccines. But they do seem to be kind of just worse on average, according to these snapshots. And yes, thank you, pharmaceutical friends in Pflugerville. So also in that kind of naughty list category is general retail trade. So that's companies like, and by the way, I'm saying companies out loud. I have no idea what the companies are so I said Pfizer just like seconds ago. I don't know if Pfizer's in my study or not. I blind everything, right? So I can't tell. I group everything into industry. But so general retail trade are things like department stores, like they sell a lot of things, right? That's different from specialized retail trade, which is actually one of the best industries in this heuristic. Specialized retail trade are like companies that sell one kind of thing, like jewelry or women's underwear or something like that, right? I was just in Columbus, Ohio, which is why I have women's underwear on the brain. It's the headquarters of Victoria's Secret. Which I didn't know, and that was exciting to learn. And apparently Victoria's Secret has a lot of like social influence over Columbus, Ohio. Who knew? Machinery and electronics manufacturing. This is basically heavy industry kind of stuff, like cars, automotive companies are in this. Samsung would be in this set, like something that makes laptops, right, would be in there, right? And then professional, scientific, and technical services are also naughty, which is interesting to me because that's things like pen test shops. And it's like, guys, you should know better. So all your cybersecurity consultancies and stuff. I think we are in technical services. I think that's our industry. So maybe we're terrible at this. I don't know. So over time, is interesting. Unfortunately, my window is only 10 weeks, but don't worry, I'm collecting this data forever. I do a snapshot once a week, every week, and it's only kind of automated because it's kind of a pain to get to because, we don't normally like keep customer data around forever because like that's bad, right? Like you don't want to do that generally speaking, but after blinding and everything like that, I keep it, I encrypt it, I store it off to the side, and now in 6 months I can come back and look, right? So that's what I hope to do. I'm probably going to submit something to B-Side San Francisco, hope, to see what has changed over time since the paper. So that should be fun. But the trends over time are kind of interesting in that, things do move around over time. And so like we can see that, while I did say earlier that wood, paper, and chemicals, your Dunder Mifflins of the world are bad actors, not bad actors. They just score poorly on this particular heuristic.
Yeah, they
They are
won
going
like
down.
Emmys and stuff.
Right. Yes, exactly. It's going down over time. Again, against this like September 30th line in the sand, right? But then we also see things, at the bottom, like pretty low overall percentages in public administration, which is basically anything government, um, is going up over time. They're going the wrong direction. And I do think so that's probably an artifact of like, I don't have any control over how customers like expose their own networks to runZero observations. They just decide, right? It's like, okay, well, I'm going to start looking at this network now or that network now or whatever. So I think a lot of times, I think specifically in public administration, there weren't new organizations coming into the study, but they were probably opening up new networks to look at, right? Because most places when they deploy runZero tend to deploy like in a very small test environment first, and then they go to production, and then they go to like QA and test and dev and all that stuff. That tends to be the pattern. So probably a little more dev over time. Anyway, it was kind of neat. Most lines are going down, but they're not going down very fast, which tells me that like no one is really taking this very seriously. There's no real push to get rid of end of life, right? Like there's no which is important now because yesterday was the Winpocalypse. This, by the way, is the only useful scene in the movie World War Z.
The book was good.
The book was amazing. The movie was, it's
Written by Mel Brooks' son.
Really, yeah. Look at that, yeah. So yeah, the Winpocalypse. It happened yesterday. Did you notice? Did all your things like catch fire and and stop and halt, I guess? No, nobody noticed. Which is not surprising because this is the insidiousness of end of life, right? Nothing really changes until something bad happens. And so we're in a zone now, starting today. Windows 10 is end of life except um, are you can get extended support from Microsoft, and they're pushing it kind of hard now. If you are a European, you can get it for free. Good job, Europe. If you are an American, and probably every other region, you got to pay. And for the consumer level, it's I think $30 for the first year, and maybe each additional year on the commercial level, which according to Microsoft means you have joined to an Active Directory because nobody runs Active Directory in their own house, right? If you're joined to an Active Directory infrastructure, you have to pay Microsoft $61. For some reason, $61 is the number they picked for the extended support updates, so ESUs, right? And the next year it'll double, and the next year it'll double after that. So it's a few tens of dollars. Now, if you're talking about fleets of, 20,000 workstations, this can add up. You really do want to like move off of Windows 10 to something. Microsoft, of course, would love you to move to Windows 11. Other people may have different opinions of what operating system you should go to. And so I don't know what's going to happen. Like today is like Hack Wednesday, right? Yesterday was Patch Tuesday. Today is Hack Wednesday. So we'll see what happens. And we'll see if Microsoft blinks because they've blinked before, and they blink basically every time. Maybe not every time. Maybe like back in NT40 when they said end of life, they meant it. But the great example, the easy example is WannaCry. When WannaCry swept the world, right? It attacked SMB v1, which was a optional component for Windows 10. It was in Windows 7, and both of those were, in support Windows, but it also affected Windows XP. And it turned out Microsoft released a patch for Windows XP against Eternal Blue, which was WannaCry. And so it is possible, unlike Y2K, it is possible for Microsoft to change its mind. Like Father Time cannot change his mind, but Microsoft can. So we'll see how this plays out. But like right now, it's pretty bad because this is what if end of life was October 14th, same data that fed the other graph, but then I shifted the date out to yesterday or to today, actually. So October 15th, your day after, right? End of life. And it looks like, in our sample anyway, healthcare and social assistance, which is any hospital, is running a stupendous amount of Windows 10. And so they have leapt up from this like average of, 8-ish% or so, up to 40% of their fleet is now end of life. Unless, of course, well, it is still end of life, but they can get extended support updates. It's such a weird way that Microsoft is doing that. They could have just said, we changed our mind. End of life is next year, but they didn't. For reasons, right? But this strikes me as bad and just kind of on its face. Again, nothing awful is going to happen right away, but this does seem to be risky, especially in some place like healthcare, right? So I don't. Do you have any thoughts on this, Nemo? This in particular, I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on like what is the real risk of a hospital running Windows 10 in a doctor's office, which we've all seen.
So I think this is a general perspective about EOL, running EOL stuff. And I do this talk. I don't know. This is gonna hold up. Yes.
Stop chasing CVEs.
Stop chasing
I'm on board.
CVE. And the perspective I have currently is if you are an unsupported piece of software or hardware for a while, you don't know when you're gonna get hit, which is fair. Like, you can mitigate that risk somehow. The problem comes from when you do get hit or when, vulnerability shows up. That is the moment of turmoil. And, maybe you are running a production infra in a critical stage and you're rolling out a new deployment tomorrow and a new exploitable vulnerability shows up. Are you going to pause that release? And are you going to work on, patching these things out today? Is there a patch available? You don't know. Is there a patch going to be immediately, is this patch safely installable on your systems? Can you do an upgrade today or not? Maybe a vendor is going to take a few more days. Is it risky enough or not? All these are like unanswerable questions you don't get to answer in advance. This is the real problem when you start chasing CVEs. Like CVEs are always after the fact. So if you're always chasing CVEs and you're running that treadmill, you're essentially waiting for someone to show up and release an exploit. And you'll at that point you can take a call. Oh, it's only 7.0, or it's a remotely exploitable thing. I need to maybe patch it, and things like that will happen. Shell shock showed up, and then people were like, okay, they're gonna patch your bash or log4j, etc. But if you are on an unsupported release, which you're running some godforsaken bash version from far along on an old Debian distro, you don't know whether Debian may or may not patch or release out a patch for your bash, which means you are suddenly vulnerable on the network, probably. And this is the problem that shows up. So the risk is quantifiable till you actually get to that point, which makes because the risk is not just in, hey, I'm gonna get exploited, but the real risk lies in, can I even patch it or not?
Yep. Yeah, so we have some recommendations. Spoiler alert, by the way, to cover your eyes if you haven't seen Zombieland.
Oh.
This is, I believe, the final scene of Zombieland. So sorry, everyone. But also you should go watch Zombieland because it's pretty good. Holds up.
I'm irritated that all the electrical infrastructure at that park was working.
Everything works.
2
It
years
was fine. It was just, Zombieland was a fun romp. It was also Left 4 Dead, the video game, the movie. So, which I don't have a problem with. So things we can do. I would say that like one, if you're like a CISO type decision maker, whatever, in your security organization, get a handle on this, right? Like you should at least know what you're dealing with. Measure to see how much is an end of life and start prioritizing this against your CVE treadmill, right? It's like, cool, I have all these vulnerabilities I have to do. And if my whole job is just like making the donuts and like rolling out patches, then consider that this is another thing that you have to do, right? As somebody in the chat had mentioned, it's like you can pay the cost now or you can pay it later. It's up to you. And it's a very eat your vegetables kind of thing, right? Like but it's like it's incumbent upon you as like somebody who's responsible for security to understand that like not everything is CVEs, not everything is even vulnerabilities and exploits, right? A lot of things is just like configuration and management and care and feeding and all the boring stuff. And getting out of out from under the boot heel of your EOL operating system is important. And who's wearing that boot? I will tell you, it is not the operating system vendors, it is the application developers. So
Hmm.
far and away, I have come to believe that the reason why people stick to end of life operating systems in particular is not because they are lazy and they don't understand the risk. It's because they have that one CAD app or that one medtech app or that one educational app that requires you to be running on an old operating system because that's what the application was written against. That's the APIs they all use. And they have not updated to a future version of Windows because there is no pressure to do that, right?
Hmm.
Because you, the buyer, and you probably these days are in a licensing agreement, keep paying them, not making trouble over that. And you both just kind of blame Microsoft. And it's like, well, I don't know if that is justified, right? In this case. I think it's the application developers that kind of force this like lock-in with security implications because from the application developers' point of view, not their problem. It's the operating system's problem and security. Like I just run a goofy little application. I care about the security in my application, but I'm not responsible for the security of the whole operating system. So how could you blame me? And then meanwhile, the operating system is saying like, hey man, we have an update for you, but unfortunately, you're refusing to do it. So it's kind of on you. And so there's like a blame game that goes all around, right? And so the recommendation is when you identify why you're on one of these operating systems, get to the bottom of that. Like maybe there's a replacement application that can do the thing that you want it to do, but on a more modern and secure operating system. Maybe there is a way for you to like twist their arm and say like, hey, I'm not going to pay this licensing fee unless you update to Windows 11 or whatever, or Linux or something like some other alternative is what you're looking for here. Application developers need to take this seriously. They are causing this problem, I believe, and they are in the position to do the most good here, I think, directly. Also, I have a call to action for researchers. Yes, Rob, that's you. Researchers, I believe it would be very difficult to get in a talk accepted at Black Hat that was like, check out all my cool Windows XP bugs. And maybe once is a novelty, but it's certainly not normal,
Hmm.
right? The researchers will be chasing the shiny. Researchers are discouraged by end of life operating systems, end of life ecosystems for new research. The exception, of course, is um, espionage outfits, right?
Hmm.
They love the stuff. And
Hmm.
so there is a disconnect in the world. There's a disconnect in the industry between what do industry researchers go after and what do espionage agents go after. And that is a problem, I think. And so researchers should be taking more time on this. And if anyone gives them guff of saying like, Windows XP, who cares? You say, I know who cares, North Korea. And then you just put that like in your justification, right, for your CFP call. I would love to hear from people who are responsible for CFPs. Do you turn people down because they're doing end of life stuff? Probably not consciously, but it's certainly not sexy. Um, and I
Yep.
am so delighted that the chat is blowing up with like, hey,
Yep.
we're running OS2, we're running XP. I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
be open about this. Share your stories with each other, especially the researcher crowd of like, well, what actually matters and what is running your business. So yeah, CISOs, app developers, and researchers, you all know what to do. If you have any questions, technically not a zombie movie is the screenshot, but it's a great Q&A with a zombie. It's from Dungeons and
Oh,
Dragons,
yeah.
Honor
Great
Among
movie.
Thieves.
Great film. Great film.
If there are any questions, Rob, did you see anything in the chat? Oh, bug bounties for
So I
email
saw a few, and
software.
I also
Yes,
wanted
thank you,
to,
Nemo.
yes, I wanted to point out, talking about ancient technology or whatever, there was within the past year, I through my connections in the retro computing community, somebody was
Mhm.
like, they're hiring a Windows 3 driver developer for some train control software in Germany, and I'm just like, maybe, so like um so yeah, and Nemo is still here. Yes.
Yes,
Boo.
I'm
Yeah.
still
The
here.
wonders of technology. Um so, Nemo, can you still hear us?
Yes, I'm still here.
Oh,
Yes.
perfect.
Good, because we're at the back to Nemo slide.
Yeah, exactly.
So, any thoughts on this whole like Windows 10 thing? Because like, I don't know, I feel like no one cares.
I think uh, the real time when people started actually caring about Windows XP was when Eternal Blue not just dropped, because it was a known exploit for a while, was
Right,
when WannaCry showed up, and
right.
it started a wormable exploit where started taking over devices, etc.
Yeah.
And that
And
is
it
the
was like
point when you can,
viral and worldwide and everything. Like, it was
yeah, and that is
big.
the point where even the government started taking up notice, and all across the world they were like, "Oh, we need to really do this stuff." And I remember like banks were blocked from doing any work in India for a while before they could actually upgrade from Windows XP,
Mhm.
so on. So it's really but we can save the world in some shape or form if we can get that number down. If we can make sure that companies don't wait for that exploit to drop, which it inevitably will. If it's not tomorrow, if it's not in a year, it will happen in a couple of years when some random exploit shows up and it's vulnerable, it's on Windows 10. And at which
Mhm.
point people will be like, oh, wish we had upgraded it back in 2024 when it was 2025, when it was easier.
Right.
Uh,
Yeah. I think we are kind of sitting on it's not necessarily like a time bomb, but like slow moving quicksand, right? I feel like, I am well prepared for quicksand through my childhood media experience. But only literal quicksand, not figurative quicksand. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that the time was a year ago, right, to start planning on moving off of Windows 10 for all your critical stuff. The second best time is right now. So, um, yeah, that's what we got. Uh, let's uh let's move on. Nemo, you're welcome to hang out too and talk about these cool bugs. But we do rapid responses all the time. The rapid responses are little write-ups and blogs and queries that we ship to customers. So they can keep tabs on hot new vulns that are in the news that their boss is probably going to ask them about.
Mm.
And so this month, these are the ones of interest that we have flagged that are kind of interesting. Bugs in Cisco ASA, bugs in Redis and Valkey, and bugs in Go Anywhere from Fortran now. And so
Don't
let's
mind if I do. I love
go
that one.
ahead and talk about these. So the Cisco ASA bug was had some heat on it, mainly because it's like a pretty bad bug. Um, we have a whole write-up about it. We won't get into the details too much. You can go look it up. But there was an emergency directive from CISA about these particular ones. Specifically, I want to say it was 2025 30333. And that's currently the only CVE that I can name off the top of my head. I only have room in my brain for like 1 to 2 CVE numbers. And so that's the one, right? CISA released an emergency directive on this. It was very unusual. I think they released it on a Friday, I think. It was like near a weekend or on a weekend. Maybe it was a Sunday. I don't quite remember, but it was a weird day of the week for them. And also a very weird timing because on the known exploited vulnerabilities list, they gave the entire federal government 1 day to mitigate this. That was the deadline. And I'm like, well, okay, well, good luck. That was to me seemed real short. It also
Mhm.
when SZA, and this is not just me, other people, mainly Glenn Thorpe of Grey Noise, noticed this when he was looking at Kev stats. When there's something that lands on the Kev, on the SZA Kev, with a very short timeline like that, like under a week basically, it tends to mean the government's freaking out over it. It tends to mean there was some kind of government breach, and they know for sure not only was it exploited because they know that for all the Kevs, but it was exploited by spies, targeting U.S. interests. So that tends to be the reason for that. So like, please move fast on that. So that was kind of a day, and this came from Matthew Kenow, who writes a lot of our RRs. It was a really good write up. So yeah, if you're running Cisco ASA, patch your stuff. These are good. These are good bugs. Now, I will say, nothing that was published seems to talk about any of these bugs being very good for initial access.
Mm.
So it's not straight shot, stranger on the internet hits your internet facing firewall, which is where you put firewalls, and like can just like hop right into your network. It's not that kind of bug, right? However, Cisco ASA is like a web VPN thing, right? Um, the the issue itself was about how any authenticated user could use this basically to elevate to root, right? And in a persistent way, which is another kind of twist, at least the attackers did. And so it's not good when like all of your VPN users are effectively root on your firewall. So that's bad, but it's not as bad as possible. That's all I wanted to say on that.
And Todd, while you're on the topic of CISA and emergency directives, there was a CISA emergency directive issued like
2 hours
2 hours
ago.
ago.
There
So,
was. EDs are rare. I want to say that it's typical to see maybe 4 or 5 in a year out of CISA. And emergency directives are basically like, oh, snap. Everybody has to act now because something bad is really happening. And so there was an ED. We don't have a slide for it because it was too late for our slide deck. But there was an emergency directive about what was it about? It was
F5.
F
Yeah.
yes, that's right. This was a weird one too. In my opinion, it seemed weird. It's on F5 products, and by F5 products, it's like basically everything having to do with big IP. There's big IP and big IQ. There's about the whatever the big branding is at
Mhm.
F5 is implicated in this. There's no CVE mentioned in the emergency directive, which is interesting to me because usually they have something like that of like go fix this thing. But nothing like that in there. The directive is simply to catalog your stuff, and importantly, if you're running end of life F5 gear, take it offline if you can. That was like the big takeaway I got from that right smack in the middle of this emergency directive. I'm like, oh, perfect for our webcast.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, running an end of life edge device that is supposed to be doing security stuff, not a great idea. And usually you don't have that fallback excuse of like, well, the app made me do it. It's that tends to be like a budget reason. And it may be budget money, budget time, budget effort. Um, okay. And I wasn't sure because I only barely scanned it. Thank you, Rich in chat. Also mentioned Nginx. Nginx has a very interesting end of life calendar, in that
Mhm.
they end of life things all of the time and very rapidly. So basically, current version -2, I want to say. Maybe
Latest two
-2.
releases.
What's that?
I
Every new release, end of life
last
stuff.
two releases. Right now, 128 and 129 are the ones that are supported.
Thank you.
Wow.
Man, we should have you on the show all the time. This is great.
Mhm.
And yeah, and so like it's a big deal. I'm sure we'll have a rapid response out on something around this, right? But it's a lot of products that are doing it. And I have friends who work at F5 and they're good people and they know what they're doing. I cannot imagine what their day is like today because this sucks. Probably they've been working with SISA for a while on this, and today is the day that we
Mhm.
all learn about that. So anyway, that was a long walk to also not mention that, by the way, with the Cisco ASA thing, Gray Noise noticed a bunch of inventory scanning on this ASA thing about 2 or 3 weeks, I want to say, before the emergency directive was released. So that's fun. If you want to know about like what's going on the internet, what's going on with internet weather, especially attacky internet weather, pay attention to Gray Noise. We love them. Miss you guys, and we'll keep watching on this kind of stuff. So the next one I want to talk about was this Redis bug that was also a Valkey bug. Um,
Mhm.
and that is the most interesting part of it, I think. So there were a bunch of Redis. There was a small handful of like Redis CVEs all around the Lua parsing engine. You could like manipulate the garbage collector and do use after freeze, basically. So okay, cool. Normal vulnerability, whatever. And what our friend here, runZero, noticed, I want to say, I'm going to blame Tom. I think it was Tom Sellers. He said, like, hey, Valkey has exactly these same bugs. I'm like, oh, dang. And so Valkey, and I'm not really up on like all of the Redis, ins and outs, but Valkey was a fork of Redis after
Mhm.
Redis HQ like switched out the licensing and made it like unpalatable to a bunch of open source developers. And so Valky's like, no problem, we got you, and we're gonna have like a normal permissive license, and people can use Redis if they want, or they can use Valky. And so they forked about a year ago. So it's unsurprising that now a recent bug affects both. However, you would not know this looking at the CVEs because I looked and the CVEs only list Redis as the affected product, which is incorrect. And this is the thing, right? The bug is actually in Lua. It is implicated in Redis, also implicated in Valky, and I think the CVEs need to be updated to actually list the affected products. But CVEs are weird like that. Like sometimes you don't do that. And to me, it seems like having looked at this bug for like all of 5 minutes, it very much feels like a Lua bug more than anything. And so I don't know what the story is, if it's just like Redis's particular implementation of Lua or what. But the meeting schedule is about to end. Oh no. Sorry, AI pal. By the way, if you're using like an AI assistant in this chat, please tell it to shut up and stop spamming the channel. But anyway, at least these two products are affected, and I suspect there are other Lua-y things out there that are affected. Now, the only other product I know that actually uses Lua is World of Warcraft, so maybe you're fine.
Yeah, I think it has to do specifically with how Lua is being integrated into Redis. I don't know that it's Lua
I think that's true. I think that's true.
No, don't impugn Lua. I like Lua.
I also like Lua. It's a delightful little Brazilian programming language that I learned one time just because it seemed neat. And they do one-based indexing, which I thought was great. Unlike every other programming
APL
language.
knew what they were doing.
Finally, we have a bug on Go Anywhere, which is a managed file transfer application. It's from Fortra. Seemed kind of interesting, mainly because it has all the markers of an interesting bug that really you should act on, right? Like this is the reason why we have rapid responses. Not that it's particularly unusual, but that is so normal for a rapid response because this guy, it's a bug and a thing that tends to be exposed to the internet on purpose. It is on the SysACAV. It's already associated with a couple different ransomware campaigns. And so this is the kind of thing, and Go Anywhere MFT in particular is a favorite target of some very particular espionage outfits out in the world, right? And so it has that crossover between like organized crime and international espionage. If you're running this thing, you got to keep an eagle eye on these patches and updates. So that's that for the roundup. And that's that for the show. We've got a couple minutes left, as been reminded by our AI friends. Any parting thoughts, Nemo? Thank you so much, by the way, for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. This was
while you're traveling in a hotel room with crummy Wi-Fi and being so rad. Thank you so much.
And also the siren call of cool stuff right outside your room, I'm sure. Like
I know, right? Yeah, you could be enjoying Barcelona. Instead, you're here on the internet with me.
No, I love being here as well. I was checking up the Redis thingy, and while Valky has issued its own GHSA security advisory, it does not still show up in the CP list on NSGS.
Nope.
Yeah, it is a continuous problem.
Naming software is hard. Naming affected software even harder.
I've been very happy with Perl. I'm betting all in on Perl. I hope because that's the only hope I have. We have to track,
and that is Perl with a U, not Perl with
a U.
Yeah.
And we track Perls of each and every piece of software that we track, and in the hope that you can use the API to figure out what you're running and check it against a list.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it. Rob, you got anything? Or are we out?
Yeah, I think that was like super awesome.
Subscribe, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Our next episode will be November 19th, which is I think a week before Thanksgiving in the US. I think. But yeah, come join us next time, where we will be talking about Redacted. I actually don't know what we'll be talking about yet. But yeah, it'll be fun. All right. Later on, everybody. Have fun, patch stuff, and watch out for those EOL zombies.
Yep.